Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Passing Time with Craig. As always, I'm your host, Craig McFarlane, and today I'm joined by the Calgary-based composer Ian Wallace. Hello, Ian.
Hey, Craig, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. I'm very excited. We haven't really had someone specific. We've had music people on the podcast before, but we haven't had somebody like you. But I guess so. One thing I want to start off with is that you kind of classify yourself as a composer for media, but you also view yourself as a filmmaker and storyteller because not everybody like really puts music and storytelling together, but they go hand in hand, right?
It's part and parcel, and that's for me. It's for me, music is storytelling, and of course, film is obvious. Film is storytelling, and it's pretty intuitive to people that okay, yeah, I'm seeing a movie, I'm seeing a story unfold, right? But when you listen to music, it's the same thing. It's not being told in words, right? Unless it is like an actual song. But in my world, in the instrumental orchestral kind of film world, it's still being unfolded like a story. You're having moments of tension and relief. You're having sort of characters, so to speak, with certain sounds and instruments, and you're having crescendos and decrescendos and all this stuff. And it's a story, like simple as that. And that's the thing. So, I'm a composer for media, but it's kind of the same thing as a filmmaker because you're just sharing stories, and it's a
Yeah,
different language, but it's the same goal, the same objective.
yeah. So what is it that gravitated you towards kind of composing? First of all, just composing music in general.
Sure, yeah. So I was always creative, like when I first started doing piano lessons, I hated practicing, classic. I hated practicing, but I would spend hours just kind of fiddling on the piano and just make my own stuff. And of course, my teachers, bless their hearts, hated me. I'm sure they were nice, but I I just wouldn't practice. I was too busy doing my own stuff. And you start to experiment, and you kind of realize that there's certain building blocks that are common to music and chords, and you start kind of piecing things together, and you write your own stuff. And next thing you know, you're writing longer pieces and more instruments. And being a film junkie and a film nerd, it's pretty easy to kind of mesh the two and then kind of do both at the same time.
Yeah. Well, that's what's nice when you have multiple passions and you can find a way to be like, all right, how can I mix this together? How is this gonna do one thing for me so I can do it all?
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. Yeah.
And so I want to ask about, well, I've got so many questions, obviously. We're going to talk about movies and scores, but when it comes to like composing and figuring out the sounds, how do you figure out like do you just automatically know you're going to need this instrument at this point, or you're going to need all these instruments, or is there instruments that you're just always trying to force in but it just doesn't work? Like how do you know to go about meshing so many different instruments together?
For sure, yeah. So the first step is the spotting session, as they call it, where you sit down with the director and you just watch the film, right? And you're taking notes. The director is kind of pausing it, throwing ideas at you, and you're just kind of this sort of gut reaction of what feels right, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, like oftentimes, I'm gonna say 10% is just gut. Is just this French horn has to go there, and I could kind of explain why, like maybe it's a heroic scene and the French horn is kind of that bold brass kind of big sound for the heroism or what have you. um but it's probably 10% just intuition generally, and it kind of makes sense, just gut feeling,
Yeah.
and the rest is just trial and error, and just trying stuff. And hey, does this work? Nope. Does this work? Nope. And then kind of putting your ego aside, because there's so many times where I'm thinking, okay, flute solo right here, it's got to be a flute solo, and you
Yeah.
show it to the director, and he's like, no dude, no way, what are you thinking? Absolutely not. So you kind of have to put your own ego out of the way and just grind. And it's that 90% of just trying stuff and kind of whittling down and, you know, eventually kind of settling on a certain palette and a sound sort of profile, right? But it's just good old fashioned elbow grease, you know.
Yeah. Well, and you must have, I feel like there must be this connection or trust between the composer and the director, because, you know, yeah, the director has this vision for this grand thing, and it's the same with wardrobe or makeup or the actors and the stunts or the set designs. So he's got this whole thing, but with music in particular, he's trying to be like, you know, I need this, and just
Yeah.
you're like trying to weed out what he's saying.
Well, exactly, and it's funny because the director doesn't use words like treble clef and quarter note and counterpoint and you know, G major. Like that's not words they use typically, right? So you kind of
Right.
have to really kind of speak their language, and that's always, it's still a struggle, right? Because I know enough about film to know what like a cue is and a story beat and these types of lingo, right? But there's always this kind of language mismatch where he's talking at you in film and I'm replying in music, and it's just different. It's a language barrier, right?
Right.
You just kind of work at it and try not to yell too much at each other, and hopefully remain on peaceful terms by the end, you know.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much work that has to go in, and music plays such an important part. Like you could play the same scene like with the characters and dialogue, and you as the composer can put in something to make it seem like they're in love, make it seem that they're being chased by a serial killer, make it seem just super comedic. Like it plays a huge part.
It does. I saw a meme the other day where it's the scene of the famous scene of Darth Vader walking down the stairs of the fighter of the Death Star.
Yeah.
But they swapped out the music for Lionel Richie "Hello" or, you know, whatever, and it plays
Yeah.
like a real like a kind of a sensual kind of like romantic vibe, and it's like a totally different scene, and it's amazing what the difference is, you know.
Oh, it's massive different. So was there are there particular movies that you can recall that were important for you to getting to this point that you're like, holy crap, like that was amazing. I want to do that. I want to help make movies like that.
Absolutely. I'm a massive nerd. So Lord of the Rings, right off the bat,
Of
you know,
course.
Howard
Yeah.
Shore, you know. You know, as a kid, like what Howard Shore did, he had something like 95 themes, individual
Hmm.
musical themes that naturally represented different cultures within the fiction and the different characters and the different story beats, and to do this balancing act of almost 100 individual themes across 3 movies, it's awe-inspiring, and it's like I want to do that, you know.
Yeah.
It's an incredible feat. So that's kind of my first thought. I got to get that out there as the nerd in me, right? But another big one was Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the famous shower scene. You know, everyone can hear
It's
that music
it
in
is
their head.
exactly there. I don't have to. I didn't have to pay the rights for anything because I'm not going to play any of the music on here because they're just all hearing these in their head.
Exactly, absolutely. And even people who haven't seen Psycho know that music. And to have something that iconic, you know, and you know, for me, just the idea of the violins playing like violins should not, like it's not musical.
Right.
It doesn't
No.
sound good. No classical
No.
composer was sitting there thinking, we should play our violins this way. This is a good idea, right?
I'm
Um,
pretty sure that was Beethoven. I'm pretty
oh, you're
sure.
right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah.
But just that creativity and just that it's one scene, it's one moment. Of course, the whole film is brilliant, but that one scene, as a kid, I saw that. Probably shouldn't have seen it as a kid, but
No.
um, it just inspires you. It's like, man, I want to figure out how to do that and how to do that next iconic scene. And I'm so far away from doing that, but that's the goal, right? That's the excitement. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and there's so many of them that are just, and people think of the movies all the time and these big blockbusters, but the music added so much to it because they're just what people can still. You start playing those tunes for them. You play a little bit of Psycho, Jaws. God, like
Yes.
everybody on the planet knows that one,
Yeah.
and it makes you not want to go into the water when it happens. Of course, my personal favorite movie and the score that just I have to listen to it all the time, and whenever I'm doing creative stuff, I just have it on is Jurassic Park score. Like
Yes,
just
absolutely. Yeah.
everything. I just listen to that soundtrack all the time. But there's Star Wars, Indiana Jones, E.T. Like there's so many classic films that I don't think would have lasted because every single element of it was like so perfect to it and added to it, and the music was a big part of all those films.
Absolutely. There's a line from a joke song that's something like half of Spielberg's millions should go to John Williams.
Yes.
But it's true, right? Like it adds so much, and you take away these scores, you take away just the beauty and the excitement and grandeur of the famous Jurassic Park theme when it shows like the Stegosaurus, group or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's no power. Like there's no power left without that music. It's I'm biased, but I think that it's probably 50-50, 50% music, 50% film. I'm not sure how it balances out, but it's everything. Yeah.
I think I think it's music and them go so hand in hand, because two other movies that I absolutely love, um, that rely heavily on the soundtracks and are like but like well-known songs, like The Big Chill and Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy being a modern day classic that people love, and a big part of the reason for that was the music and the fun of it all.
hmm
Um, but but that just shows the importance of the music in movies and how they go so well together.
hmm Yeah, absolutely.
And so I wanted to ask you, so who are some of your other favorite composers?
For sure. Yeah. So one composer that I've been just obsessed with for some time now, famously did Joker. Just
Mm,
won the Oscar for Joker.
yeah,
Um, Hildur Guðnadóttir. Um, she's doing stuff with sort of avant-garde techniques that is just so creative. And I'm just going to nerd out for a second here. Um,
do it,
in,
do it. This is a nerd episode, 100%.
awesome. Okay, so in Joker, I was watching it and I was realizing that there's kind of two. So for those who've seen Joker, without spoiling anything, the main character is kind of torn between sort of fantasizing and this kind of fantasy kind of world and story, and then also
Yeah,
kind of torn into spiraling and this really dark kind of spiral. And
yeah,
what's fascinating is what Hildur does is she has her string players do two avant-garde techniques. So there's this technique called saltasto, which is when you play uh, closer to the fingerboard on your violin, right? So closer up the fingerboard if you're playing like that. And then there's salpantacello, which is when you play closer to the bridge. And it's lesser known avant-garde kind of 20th century weird stuff, right? It's just
yeah,
different ways of playing, right? But she uses saltasto whenever he's fantasizing, and you get this flute like this richness, this really neat hopeful sound, right? And then salpantacello whenever he's spiraling, and it's the dark side of things. And it's almost like
yeah,
she's using these string techniques as like a leitmotif, as like a musical motif that's growing with the story and with the plot line. And like nobody's noticing that. Like who's sitting there thinking, ah yes, Sal Ponticello, great
yeah.
technique. Like nobody's noticing it, but subconsciously you feel it, and you're
Yeah,
watching it And all of a sudden these two tracks, even though in both cases it's the same violins, it's the same instruments, and it's subtle, like unless you're a nerd, you might not quite pick up on it. um, but it's totally changing the story of the film, and it's making you realize how different these two tracks are. And then by the end, when you have this explosion, so to speak,
Yeah,
it just hits you, and the music is such a big part of that, and nobody notices. But
she was so well deserving of all the awards she got,
mhm,
because it completely added to the film, and managed to, yeah, kind of do this balancing act, where it all worked together. And then if there were moments where it wasn't quite clear exactly if it was if he's being sane or insane at that moment, like, they just mesh. And yeah, no, but I don't know the actual instruments and everything, but I can notice a difference.
yeah, absolutely. And like you say, it made the film. So that's kind of my top pick for the past little while would be Joker.
Yeah.
And I'll throw one more at you. If you ever saw um, Mad Max Fury Road,
Yes.
Junkie XL, he's a trance guy. He's from electronica, he's from dance music. And taking his sensibility and his style and applying it to film music, you just get this new thing. You just get this new intense, just this pounding sound that you just really haven't seen that much of. And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons I love film music, is you have guys from the electronic world, from rock, from you think of Danny Elfman was in rock bands, Hans Zimmer was a synth guy, and then synthesizers and that kind of world. And they take this sensibility and they bring it to film, and it just hits you with this new approach, this new breath of fresh air. So Mad Max Fury Road, the reason it works, in my humble opinion, is the music. Like, the reason it's so intense is the music. And that's trance, that's electronica in the film world, which is incredible.
Yeah, well, and yeah, music adds that intensity. We mentioned Psycho and the shower scene, and the way they made the noises with the violin. It's as if you can feel that knife coming at you, like, and it's terrifying, but it adds this intensity. Um, so, as a composer, though, with having so many iconic scores out there, and hearing a lot of the same things, how hard is it to try and really make this scene, all right, it's a love scene, but I want to add something different to it, and I want to make it its own still.
That's kind of one of the eternal challenges, right? Is because it's so hard not to bring in your expectations of how it should read and how it should play out, right? And that's why I it's interesting how you see film music as kind of being in these eras. And I think this is the reason why, where you have kind of the classical era, your John Williams, Jerry Goldsmith, Bernard Herrmann, right? And they're all classically trained, they're all formidable classical composers, right? Um, but then you see the rock guys coming in, and you see your Danny Elfmans and your Hans Zimmers, and these guys who are coming from rock bands, and they're coming into film. And I think that's why, is because they're trained in a different world and they're listening to different stuff. So
Right.
that they come in and they're not really consulting John Williams. They're not really consulting Bernard Herrmann. They're bringing in their own genre, their own style, right? So
Right.
then, as a composer, the challenge is to listen to stuff that is out of your comfort zone.
Right.
And that's why I tell all my friends, you got to listen to country music. Everybody says, I love everything except for country. you know
Yes.
uh, but it's that willingness to hear new sounds and come from, and so I think it's interesting. It's not the writing side to focus on, in my experience. It's the listening side,
Right.
and what you listen to is going to inform what you write. um, but if you were to sit there and think, okay, it's a love scene, but I want it to be new, I don't think you get anywhere. I don't think you make any traction because new doesn't really mean anything, right?
Right.
Um, so it's listening to stuff that's outside your world and growing as a musician and being broader, right? And then I think you try again, and it just naturally is a bit different, a bit fresher. Um, um, Easier said than done. Took me years to love country music, but it's informed my writing, and now, funnily enough, country music has inspired my orchestral writing. And my
Right.
challenge to everyone is to do that. Absolutely.
Well, and I mean, I don't mind country music. I like country music. I'm one of the few people who has a wide variety of music. But
Yeah.
I think, what I'm getting from you is, and it makes so much sense, but people don't really think of it this way, that if you're trying to almost like eliminate something, which is not a negative, like a genre of music or movie is not a negative, but if you're trying to eliminate things because you don't like that style, you're eliminating part of your creativity and an option for it, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And for me, it's really important to see the commonality of music and to see that, yeah, sure, these genres seem night and day. They seem totally different, but end of the day, music is so connected, and every genre and every sound and culture has some kind of thread through it. Um, and I think if you can see that commonality, it just helps you grow and just helps you, expand your horizons. And you might not end up being a country artist, right? But you'll be a better musician.
Yeah. Is there a type of instrument that you uh, always try to get involved in your orchestra and just doesn't always have a place for? Like, is there an instrument that you're like, it's got to be in here?
There's a couple. I mean, the obvious one is piano, just because I grew up playing piano and that's kind of my thing. And I write at the piano. I sit there. So even if I'm writing for a string section, I'm still playing it on piano, right?
Yeah.
So piano kind of ends up making its way everywhere, even though maybe it shouldn't. Just my bias, right? But my favorite that I always use, I always have to use it, is I have a kalimba. So it's a little finger drum with a series of metal pegs on it, and
Oh,
it's a sub-Saharan African instrument that was kind of brought over to the States and used in a lot of sort of early Delta blues and that kind of stuff, and then a lot of um, has made its way into folk songs and kind of um, a lot of American sort of Southwest kind of music. But it's just got this. I just Google kalimba if you get the chance. Kalimba if you don't know it. But it's just this beautiful finger drum that's so subtle, and because it's so subtle, you can put it in anything, and it
yeah.
just adds this color. And I love it. And if you listen to my music, everywhere you'll hear this kalimba. Somewhere in the background, there's a kalimba, and it just, I don't know. It's just a beautiful, simple instrument.
I like it. I need to Google this, and maybe it's an instrument I could actually figure out how to play. I don't
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
um, so the first time you are like conducting people and getting and kind of being that ringleader, what was that like for you? Were you nervous? Was it just super excited and you're like, this is what I've always meant to do?
It was both, definitely. The first kind of real kick at the can was back in grade 12 in high school. My band teacher was nice enough to let me write a piece for the band and then conduct it in the final concert. And every rehearsal, I was just nervous beyond nervous, just a silly high school kid, socially anxious, up there in front of 120 people. Um, but this really amazing thing happened, that when it was time to perform and I was in my suit and I had my conducting baton and I was ready to go, it just all washed away and it was just the music. Um, so I just walked up there and just conducted it, and it was all the music, and that was all there was. And I wasn't thinking about the crowd or the band or what could go wrong. And I think that's a common thing where a lot of people, especially people who are kind of shy or kind of socially anxious, that kind of thing, I think they find that with music on stage, it's this amazing tool that you can just let everything else wash away and just have it be just the music. So you hear
Right.
stories of people with social anxiety who are rock singers, right? And it's that same kind of thing where you get up there and it's just the music and it's just the beauty of the music and the story. And um I don't get to conduct as often as I wish, but an experience like that, it's like, this is what I'm meant to do. This is it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, I was on your website, which I'll plug again at the end of the episode, but it's ianwallacemusic.com. And first of all, I watched. There's one movie that you composed that's on there that people can watch. The what is it? It's the Birds of a Feather, the
That's
pigeon racing.
that's right. Yeah.
First of all, love that. I thought it was great. And the music. So you composed the music for that. How was that experience? That was a different type of topic for sure.
Yeah, that was incredible. So that was there's a local filmmaker who at the time was finishing up his SATE film and TV program, and was doing documentaries, and kind of asked me, "Hey, do you want to do the music for this pigeon racing documentary?" And so I just said, "Sure. What is pigeon racing and why?" you know.
Yeah.
But it was this amazing thing where the filmmaker Nathan Shaw was able to kind of find the beauty in it. And if you watch the film, he kind of shows pigeons as being kind of beautiful, you know.
Oh yeah.
You don't think of pigeons as being this amazing creature, but they kind of are. And so he interviews, if you see the film, he interviews some club members and shows how they release the pigeons all at once, and there's this big kind of cloud of pigeons, and they all kind of find their way home, and they're all tagged, and they keep track of who gets home first. But my approach was just forget that they're pigeons and just see the beauty. So honestly, it sounds kind of silly, but during one of the big kind of release scenes, I kind of pretended they were doves. Because the dove, there's no baggage. There's no kind of cultural baggage of being ugly pigeons, city,
No, they
urban,
disease. Right.
disease. Exactly. So I just pictured doves, and it sounds kind of silly, but I think it helped me to tear away that baggage, and then hopefully tear the baggage away for the viewer, and show that, hey, this is a beautiful animal and this is a neat sport, even though we're talking about pigeons and pigeon racing. you know
Yeah. It's a little different, but no, it was very very interesting. I definitely recommend people checking it out because I think it's just a unique subject. And then you have a bunch of other right at the top. You have a bunch of audio files of yours on from SoundCloud, and they're just. I listened to a bunch of them, and I just thought they were just. I loved them. Like, and there was several of them that I was like listening to, and I was like, and I was just kind of forgetting. I was like, what movie is this from again?
Well, thank you
I
very
was like,
much.
wait.
I appreciate that.
So no, it's great. So I mean, the world's kind of crazy right now, but you're still, available to talk with people about composing, and I mean, there's enough stuff that you can do some social distancing stuff, right? Like that's still a
Absolutely.
go.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is the perfect time for it, right? Like, it's so easy, and I'm sure everyone's found this. It's so easy to be stuck at home and just be lethargic. And I've been guilty of this, where I actually haven't been that creative, and I've just been kind of sitting around and, when is this thing going to be over?
Yeah.
um, but it's the perfect time. And absolutely, I've had friends reach out to have some scores written. I've myself, I've reached out to filmmakers and offered just free film scores, because why not? It's a perfect time to share and tell stories and learn. And especially in Calgary, there's so much going on. It's not necessarily easy to find, right?
Yeah.
But once you do, there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of people that are really active and creative, and it's the perfect time for it.
Oh, definitely. And I want to mention you also work daytime, job at Longham and Quaid. So you're a great resource for people who need help with that music production side, because music and audio, obviously, you can attest to the importance of great production value.
Yes, absolutely. And that's been nice for me because in selling stuff, you have to know about it, you know? So I've been able to learn a lot and kind of learn from my coworkers and like you say, production is so important, and you don't need much, and that's kind of my big push, if I may, is
Yeah.
if there's people out there looking to get into this and looking to start recording their own music, and they've kind of played on piano or guitar, or they've sung, and then they want to kind of put this on paper, so to speak, on the computer. um, it's not that expensive, and you can really get into it for pretty cheap with some basic gear. And it seems very intimidating, but I didn't encourage people to reach out. I'm happy to help if you want to reach out to me, but call your local music store. Like, it's not that complex, and with a couple of bucks you can get recording and get off to the races.
Oh yeah, no, I gotta say, this is Long McQuaid is where we got stuff for our podcast, and like you guys are great, and you have so much knowledgeable staff and lots of a variety of products to fit within your budget. What are some of the like? What do you think what's stopping some people from doing their own thing?
I think there's a stereotype that it's complicated. I think that there's the sort of the mechanical side of things, of it seems intimidating and it seems complicated. um, and people don't realize that if you watch a couple of videos on YouTube, call your local music store, um, within a couple of hours you can kind of know all the basics. Honestly, that's there's not that much to it. So that's kind of the mechanical side, but then there's the side of, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, it's just a hobby, it's just for fun. No, 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 I don't want to share it, I'm not ready yet. And there's this
Yeah.
kind of yeah, this kind of like, this might sound kind of harsh, but this insecurity. And I say that as somebody who's very insecure about his music. And there's that barrier of like, i'm not I'm not good enough. But the secret is that I've kind of learned from great composers, is that nobody's good enough. And there's a quote that I adore, when Steven Spielberg asked John Williams to score Schindler's List, which of course, beautiful score, just stunning, one of the
Oh yeah.
greats. John Williams' reply was, he actually turned it down and said, "Sorry, Steven, I'm not good enough." And Steven's reply was, "I know, but all the great composers are dead." So, you know, so the idea being that even John Williams didn't think he was good enough for the project, right? Um, and I'm no
And
John
John
Williams.
Williams is, yeah.
And exactly. So if the greatest, like almost every score that we've talked about, E.T., Jurassic Parks, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, this is all one guy. That's John Williams.
Yeah.
And if he's feeling insecure, then that should kind of unify us. And I think that it should hopefully inspire us to put it out there and get recording and sharing. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be fun, you know.
Yeah. So the first time you showed something you scored to friends and family, how was your chest that day?
I was close to a heart attack.
Yeah.
And it's funny. It's one of those things where when you're nervous, you're hypercritical, and you're always in kind of doomsday mode. So you're,
Yeah.
you're seeing your friends' faces, and you're thinking, they hate it. They must hate it. Oh no, they're not smiling. Um, but they loved it. And at the time, I kind of thought, well, they didn't love it enough, and maybe this isn't my thing, and maybe I should quit. But if you're with supportive people, there's no reason not to share. And regardless of the reaction, the fact that you're sharing is in itself pushing you forward. And the worst
Yeah.
thing you can do is not share, because as there's the old saying that, perfectionism is the enemy of good. you'll never
Yeah.
do anything good if you're a perfectionist. So
I love it. Like you, as a fellow creative person, I'm always like the first podcast that we released of this of Passing Time with Craig. I was like, I don't know if I want to release it out into the world. And like anything I've ever done, I'm just like, I like, and then yeah, and then you're just waiting and like, well, and you're doing the thing like, well, I mean, there's this that kind of went wrong. You're finding the flaws, but nobody else is seeing that or hearing that, and you're the one pointing it out.
yeah, exactly. It's all like, it sounds silly, but it's all in your head, really. And people are supportive and they want to hear your stuff and they want you to share and they're excited for you to share. And if you can just kind of get out of your head and just share it, good things happen.
Exactly. Exactly. Just put it out there. This is now the time to really show that we're supportive and, do what you want to do, make yourself happy, make others happy, being smart. Let's clarify that with that. So, as we start to wrap up here, uh, people do have some free time on their hand and they're always looking for something to watch. What are some movies that you recommend? I mean, we've listed a bunch of them already. And you've mentioned Joker because again, that movie is a fantastic movie. And I'm hoping a lot of people have seen it already, but what are some other movies specifically when it comes to music scores would you recommend to people?
For sure. Yeah. So I'll just throw a few kind of random names out there and get kind of a smattering of scores I think are lesser known, but very important, I think. There's a film called Moon, and
Yes.
thank you. And the score by Clint Mansell is just, it's very, very intense, but it's beautiful, and it's this amazing mix of kind of pounding drums and then soft, somber piano, often at the same time, and it's inspiring. So also a great movie. So check that one out. That's a biggie.
Yeah.
Another one I throw out there. I'm trying to think of lesser known ones that people might not have seen. I'm gonna throw out Alexander Desplat. Um,
Oh,
a lot of his music. I mean, he's won a lot of Oscars, so he's not lesser known, but a lot of his stuff is art house films. So you think of Wes Anderson always hires Alexander Desplat for very good reason.
yeah.
So Grand Budapest Hotel, there it is, amazing score. Really, really creative use of repetition. Ostinato is the kind of the buzzword, where you have these repeating phrases and
Okay.
using, yeah, repetition to build emotion, which is really neat. Um, And then last but not least, I'm going to throw out an oldie. I'm going to say, let's go with Planet of the Apes, which very famous movie. This is the old one, the old school one, the very first one. But
Oh, the
Jerry
Heston
Goldsmith,
one.
yes, thank you. Jerry Goldsmith, amazing old school golden age composer who just invented the game. He's one of the guys who made film music credible and made it seem like a real art form. And for those of you who haven't seen that, you got to check it out.
It's great. The makeup, the special effects, like just the look of it. They did a good job with it. It still holds up.
It holds up. It holds up. Absolutely.
Maybe skip some of the sequels.
Yes, that's good advice.
Um, well, I thank you, Ian, for being on here today. I'm definitely going to have you back on again because we're just going to movie geek out together, I think.
Absolutely.
But please check out his stuff, ianwallacemusic.com. That's IANWALLACE music.com, where you can find a bunch of information on him, some audio clips, the Birds of a Feather doc that's on there, as well as ways to contact him, because he's willing to help you out and whatever you need to know.
Yeah, don't hesitate. I'm happy to help. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Ian, so much for being here today. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to more and more of your work. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. I appreciate it, and stay safe out there.
Thank you. You stay safe as well. Thanks, guys, for listening. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at PTW Craig, or follow us on Facebook at Passing Time with Craig. And of course, we got our new website, passingtimewithcraig.com, you can check out. So thank you guys, and we'll talk soon.